Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the functional diagnostic nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 412 of the Health Detective Podcast. Moving right along here. I got some exciting announcements, so I want to shout this guy out. He might actually be on the podcast in a couple of weeks or months. His name's Steven, and he recently got hired on the team for content creation. So not only is he going to be helping me with some fancier studio stuff, one of the things that you guys can start to look forward to and expect, both as our podcast guests, but also as our podcast listeners, is under the video tabs on YouTube, you're going to start seeing us promoting and posting medium clips, as he called them. It's funny because I didn't know if that's the technical term for it. I'd actually never heard that. Obviously, you guys know that we would be considered slightly long-form content. We record for about 50 minutes. Obviously, long-form goes all the way to 3 to 4 hours sometimes, depending on the podcast you're on, but I would classify us as long-form content. Then you have shorts, which are those 60-second things that you kind of keep scrolling and you find an hour of your life is gone, and you got to delete the app for a little bit, or at least I do, to make sure I keep my sanity. But Steven kind of defined medium clips as something that I've seen a million times, and so have you guys, but I just didn't realize they were called that. The medium clips are extractions from the podcast, maybe 6 to 10 minutes, that focus on one specific topic or one specific question, but you can kind of give someone a lot of information on that specific thing within those, let's say, 5, 6 to 10 minutes. And so you'll be seeing a lot more of those on our video tabs. We'll take podcasts just like the one that we're about to do today. We'll clip it down into a few different ones. You'll still have the full podcast, to be clear, under the live tab. That's always true here. But you'll also have these little clips that you can just kind of focus on the main thing that you might be interested in, and it's going to help with our search engine optimization as well. You guys might not care about this, but I like to always let you know what's going on. Something that you definitely will care about, one announcement that we have today, is our clinical summit week that is coming up on May 12th. So that's just in a couple of weeks here. We actually have a link for you guys below. It's fdntraining.com/CSW. That's fdntraining.com/CSW, and we'll leave that up for just a moment. But what is going to happen on Clinical Week is this was inspired by our Holistic Health Week. I see quite a few of you already on, so let me know if you were a part of Holistic Health Week in some way in the chat. Did you guys get to come on from that? Maybe you were, okay, awesome. Maybe you were someone that even got to speak, so let me know in the chat if you were a part of Holistic Health Week. But anyway, that went so well, and we had 600 people on live at certain points. So we said, clearly this is what individuals want. We need to do it again. Not to mention that our subscriber count on our YouTube went up by, I think, 15%, which was amazing. So we're so glad to have all these new people here checking out our podcast guests. But we figured we wanted to do it again and get even nerdier. So the Clinical Summit Week is basically Holistic Health Week, even nerdier, and instead of 7 in a day, we realized we have to keep Detective Ev around for a little bit to keep hosting these things. So it's going to be 2 sessions, 1 hour off, 2 sessions for 5 days. So it's completely free to register for. If you do want the replays, they are $29. They will always be $29 for our trainees and graduates. For those that are not FDN trainees and grads, no problem. You can still get the replays, but keep in mind they will go up to $97. I believe that's sometime throughout the week during Clinical Week. So if you're listening to this at the time it came out, you're in plenty of time. So that's fdntraining.com/CSW. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys there. All right, let's move to our guest today, who I actually just saw in person. Unfortunately, this is before I mentioned this on the podcast, before I got a little sick. You were actually one of the last people I saw at that conference, because I remember getting up, and then I kind of texted Christina. I'm like, I got to do the Irish goodbye here thing. I'm not feeling good, but I never made it to the conference the next day.
We all wondered what happened to you.
Yeah, I planned to just get up and kind of get some air, and then it turned into, yeah, we're not coming back. This is also a second time guest, so we will be focusing on one topic today, which you guys will hear about in just a moment. But if you don't know her, Kimberly Rose is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner who works virtually with busy, driven health seekers to uncover the root causes of their mysterious symptoms. Through functional lab testing, she identifies hidden imbalances and helps clients understand which foods their body needs to heal and thrive. Her personalized approach brings balancing clients to enjoy food and live confidently again. Kimberly also teaches clients to tune into their body's signals, equipping them with the knowledge to maintain their results and consistently feel their best. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Cool. And I like getting to do these ones because it's always cool hearing about people's stories, but I also love getting to dive deeper into topics that they're super passionate about. So, again, we will just jump right into it. One of the things we want to cover today, menopause, perimenopause, but even this broader idea, I think, of these different um, the changes in a woman's life that she goes through and how her cycle changes over time. And it's always funny for me. It'll never get not funny for a 29-year-old male to be so interested in this. I don't know that I was fully interested in it, admittedly, when I first started FDN. But you guys have helped me over these last 8 years just become so aware of how different men and women operate. Obviously most people know that kind of, but there really is a whole different operating system to some degree. Some people have even kind of joked, although it is serious to some degree, men go through a 24-hour cycle, right? We kind of feel the same every single day. I kind of fluctuate throughout the same stuff. Whereas women, it's like you could be on fire one part of the month, might need a little more rest the next part of the month. I feel like you guys are super women sometimes, and then this does change over the course of your life. So, just with a broader general question to start off, do you think most women are even aware, especially outside of the functional health space, about how important these changes are throughout their life, or do you think that we've become pretty disconnected with this?
Oh gosh, I really think that women are starting to learn about their bodies more than they ever have in their life or in history, really, because women have been disconnected not only from themselves because we've been taught everything through men's studies that we should be doing. And men's studies were done because you are, following that 24-hour cycle. So, if you can relate it to the sun and the moon, men are like the sun, the 24-hour a day. You get up in the morning, you go to bed at night. It's like 24 hours. The sun comes up, goes down. And women are like the moon. I think the moon's a 27-day cycle, but 28 days is the average for women. And so as the moon waxes and wanes, the same thing happens to our hormones over a 28-day period. And so we are different from that. I mean, I know everyone's heard of the book that men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I mean, we are two totally different people, and our bodies are different, and we should be treated differently as well. But studies are just now starting to catch up with women, and there's starting to be more clinical trials with women only, or women be included, so that way everything is tested on us to make sure that these studies are teaching us the right things for our body and not just what's right for men.
That's something, admittedly, I only learned a couple of years ago from this podcast. So just to touch on that really quick and kind of fully explain it, when you mentioned like the studies being on men, for those that don't know, can you just kind of touch on like what has been the history with that? I don't mean every little detail, but just like what has been done and hasn't been done in science for women.
Well, I mean, first of all, exercise. Exercise science, whenever women are told to fast in the morning, because it works for men to do fasted workouts. And now there's an influencer and a doctor that I follow from Stanford. Her name's Dr. Stacy Sims, and she's doing a lot of women's clinical trials and learning a lot about women's physiology. And she says women shouldn't do fasted workouts, that when we wake up, our bodies are looking for food. And whenever we feed our bodies within 30 to 90 minutes of waking up, it helps lower our stress response. And that we'll start breaking down muscle before we start breaking down fat. And we thought if we fasted worked out that we would be breaking down the fat instead. But now that women are actually, being studied, we're learning these new things.
Yeah, it's good, and I think some of it has some common sense, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's common to us. Or ancestral wisdom is almost what I'm trying to get at, and we're starting to prove that in science. So what I'm saying right now is completely theoretical, but I had always kind of wondered, like when I got into this space, one of the things that I noticed is not always, but some men seem to do better on the lower carb, higher fat, moderate protein thing. Whereas a lot of women that I knew seem to need a little bit more carbohydrates. Now, again, these are anecdotes and just I'm having fun thought experiments. I always kind of wondered, I'm like, well, if assuming what I noticed was actually true and not just in my little bubble, if that was true, then why would that be true? And if we go back from an ancestral perspective, you kind of think about it and you say, well, if we are correct in this image that we have of um, history where okay the men are going to go out and hunt, the women are kind of taking care of different things for the tribe, maybe it would be the case that if they're gathering and we're doing the hunting, maybe this is why we can operate better fasted, because the last thing I'm going to go do is eat a 12-ounce steak and then go hunting afterwards. That would probably weigh me down even if it's otherwise nutritious for me. So I'm just making stuff up and having fun with it, but I kind of do wonder sometimes, is that why these subtle differences are still relevant today? Because ancestrally speaking, this is might be how it was in the past. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or if you've thought about that before.
Yeah, I mean, really, it kind of makes me think about what I've learned about the luteal phase. Tuning into our bodies and understanding our cycle, and understanding that each part of our cycle makes us feel differently, makes us have different nutrition requirements, makes us require different types of even exercise or movement. I mean, nobody wants to do squats when they're menstruating, because you just have such low energy. I mean, I'm sorry to put that out there, but it is about women, right? So,
Yes.
but in the luteal phase, we need actually an extra 260 something or 270 something more calories that our body actually requires. And that's why actually we get a little hungrier in our luteal phase and we start craving a little bit more. And the cravings can also come from other things too, but just physiologically, like you're talking about ancestrally, when we tap into how we're built and understand how we're built and what those needs are, we can actually understand what those signals are that they're sending to us.
Well, and let's start diving into that because I think this is a really important part of today's conversation, at least as someone who's been on this podcast the whole time and what I know we've talked about and what we haven't talked about. So here's what I mean. In the past, we have people like the wonderful Jennifer Woodward come on and she'll talk about painless periods, she calls them, right? That your period should not be something where you're miserable and having to leave work and having to leave school. So, okay, let's say that that's true. There are still differences throughout the month, is what you're saying. And so I guess my question is, and it's probably going to lead to a fairly large part of the conversation, I'd imagine, but I'd love to know at what point are the changes abnormal? And so I can go to the extreme to prove it. Like if you're feeling sick for 7 days out of the month, I think both you and I would agree that's probably abnormal. But at the same time, a woman is not supposed to feel the same all 28 to 31 days out of the month. So how do we draw the line between the changes are now abnormal and maybe there's something deeper going on versus, hey, these are just natural, healthy changes that are expected within a month's time frame? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
It makes absolute sense. And I really think that's where FDNs really shine, because we test and we don't guess, right? If a person is having painful periods, and I love Jennifer Woodward, by the way, I have her book, love it, learned so much from it. But whenever you have pain at any point in time, something's going on and we need to figure it out. If your cycles are too short or too long, we need to test and we need to see what's going on. So, as an FDN, we like to search through using like something like a Dutch test, which is going to test your cortisol levels, your hormone levels. And it gives us data on what your body's actually doing over a 24 period of time during a certain part of your cycle. And that data is what really helps us to guide, what to do with that. Because a lot of times, some of those painful periods can also be mineral depletion. It could be adrenal dysfunction, which contributes to that mineral depletion. And so just giving the body what it needs is going to help it to balance itself out, which will help to solve some of those things. But you just never know, because everybody is bio-individual, right? Everybody's body is different. So we really have to take each person case by case and see how we can help them through the data that we get from the labs.
Okay, gotcha. I'm very, and she would not mind me saying this. She knows I've said this to her one-on-one, but I'm very lucky with Maddie because prior to marrying Maddie, I had dated people in the past that hated me for 3 to 5 months out of 3 to 5 days out of the month. Maddie never hates me. It's rather stable, but I actually think it's because she's healthy, right? There's certain changes that are clearly predictable. And we try to do our best. It's a privilege to have this. I understand this, but with her working online and stuff and having a little more flexibility in her work schedule, we're kind of able to see that there's times where, as I mentioned in the beginning, she's on fire, man. She can work harder than me on my best day, and it's like she's plowing through work and it's nothing. And then there's other times where you do need to rest a little bit more. So that is what we're saying. That's perfectly healthy and natural. The second that we're starting to feel, notable pain or severe mood swings, that is when we want to make sure, well, ideally in a perfect world, everyone would test before that even happens. I get that. But realistically speaking, we know that they're not going to do that. So if someone's experiencing that, that is definitely where you would draw the line and say, definitely make sure there's some testing involved to figure out if this is abnormal.
Definitely. I think if you have, because I personally can relate to that. In high school, I used to have to call my mother to pick me up because my periods were so painful. And I would have to make the hottest bath that I could make, sit in it after I took ibuprofen until the pain was gone. And then I would get out and lay with a heating pad. It was really, really bad. And then later on, I found out a few years later that I had endometriosis, which was helped through laparoscopy. And after that, I had painless periods. But what led to that point, I can only guess it was my diet. It was a lot of the sugar I was eating, as a teenager. My mother used to cook really well for us, but, I also had free will to get anything I wanted at the grocery store or things out of the cabinet, eating out fast food, especially in college. And so, it's all of those things that can contribute to that, but definitely draw the line when you have severe pain or too much pain for too long. So, because something is not functioning right and you want to know how to fix it and get it back in balance.
What role do you think the widespread use of the pill, birth control, and even IUDs, I guess, is now playing in young women in particular? I know any age can use these things, but young women in particular, I feel like, and I hear these stories not only from the podcast, but when I've worked with clients, it's like I'll talk to someone who's 26 and they're like, oh yeah, I got thrown on this thing in like my early teenage years. And I'm thinking, your body, I'm trying to imagine if I was thrown on something during that time of my life, again, fully acknowledging that I'm a different person than a woman. I get that. But that was such a developmental time in my life. My voice went from super high to a little bit low. Like, so many things are changing. And then we're just throwing a pill to this person that completely messes with the hormones. So what do you think that is doing to people? Is that furthering this disconnect from how they should naturally be? I know some women are on this and are like, oh, I don't really get a period anymore. And they unfortunately think that this is a good thing. So what is this doing to people, this widespread use of birth control and these IUDs? Or are those two separate categories almost? Or they do kind of different things?
No, they work similarly. It just depends on if there's estrogen and progesterone in the IUD. If it's a copper IUD or progesterone only, like that can be different. And there's different birth control pills too. But but they're all synthetic hormones. They're all suppressing something going on in your body. And so there's always a compensation. So yes, they feel better. They can go out. They have freedom in a sense. Sexual freedom, which is kind of where the whole birth control pill came about, to prevent pregnancy. And so, and I honestly don't want to say anything to make someone feel like they should or should not be on birth control. This is just what I've been learning about birth control, not only through the testing that I've seen from women, but also just from my own experience and friends and family who've been on birth control. But and there's recent studies that have come out too, just showing the changes that birth control does to your body. There's even a crazy study that talks about how women may even choose a different partner based on the birth control that they're on, because it's suppressing certain hormones, and those hormones are kind of what help you seek out and attract your partner. So that kind of really blew my mind. But to kind of reel it back in a little bit, birth control it's definitely has its uses, but back in the day when doctors, and they're still being taught this today, I believe in medical school, according to the doctors that I've been listening to on podcasts, that birth control is given to, cure PCOS or to help with migraines or different, just if something's wrong, oh, it's got to be the hormones. Let's put you on a pill and see if we can level out those hormones. It's almost like they want to level us out like men are leveled out throughout the day.
Mhm.
But it just, it changes our, that's why sometimes we have fatigue and we have brain fog and things like that on birth control, because it is changing and it's suppressing your estrogen, your progesterone, and whenever those are suppressed, you're going to start feeling, and sometimes menopausal, because you might get hotter, you might have hot flashes, you might have weight gain. I remember my friends in college always saying that they gained weight from being on the birth control pill, and I didn't really understand why. And now looking back at it, I do, because of the physiology that it is changing in the body whenever you're taking it. So what I think is very important is that in today's age, doctors should be educating their patients on, yes, this is the positive effects that birth control may have for you, but also these are the things you need to look out for, because this is what it's doing to your body. Because I feel like they just give it out like, this is the fix, and they don't educate. And then later on, when people find out what it's really doing to their body, I mean, they can get, really upset about that. I know I would.
Yeah, you probably saw. I'm trying to not get into this as deep as I want to, but you probably saw the smile on my face to some degree, the smirk, you could say, when you brought up that study about the changes in attraction.
Mhm.
Um, I would hope that anyone that listens to this even remotely regularly knows me well enough at this point to know that I'm intellectually interested in stuff, and I'm not trying to be overly opinionated with certain things. Norm, I could still hold a belief and not also believe that the thing should be removed. I do not think we should take away birth control. That's ridiculous. That's not what I'm suggesting. But from what I have read and the stuff that I've seen, I I think there might, I'll word it this way. I think there might be a time where we look back, not even just in the functional space, but society as a whole, and say, what the heck were we doing? Because we are changing the way that young women operate. We're setting them up for sickness. So that's one thing. So before you think I'm like trying to take away something from women, I mean, if anything, I'm trying to do the opposite, because it makes a lot of these people sick. It doesn't allow them to understand if they're already sick, right? Because, like you said, you'll have these symptoms and they just throw the pill at you and act like it's a cure. It is absolutely not a cure. I'm not suggesting, I mean, you have to talk to your doctor. I'm not suggesting you get off anything, but at the same time, it's not a cure. And then you look at this issue of my generation is having so many more encounters sexually with partners, and you kind of wonder, well, why is that the case? And it's like, you know why? They look at it like there's no consequences. And there's people in my school, and it's getting even worse with this next generation. I feel like by 18 years old, they've already slept with 5 to 10 people. I'm not saying this as a judgment. I don't know anyone, even a guy, I do not even know guys that look at that and say, oh, you know what, that was a good choice. Like, I'm glad that I did that. But when there's no consequences and we're raging with hormones and we're 15 and 16, we do stupid things. And then finally, to your point that you brought up, we have all these people that it changes who you're attracted to. So what's happening now? The women are on birth control, a lot of them, until they get married and want to have kids. If they're choosing to have kids, they hop off the birth control, they have kids, and then I don't know if you know this, about 70 to 80% of divorce is initiated by women in America. Now, of course, one side is going to immediately say, well, that's because men suck. I'm sure some of us men suck, no doubt. I don't know that it's to that degree. What would happen, though, if you thought you were attracted to your partner for all those years and all of a sudden your hormones change and you realize, I was never attracted to this person to begin with? Because that's actually that's real. And that might prompt a divorce. So I said I wasn't going to get into this. I totally just got into this. I will retract to the best of my ability.
There's
I don't
definitely
even know, do you want to go there at all? Do you have
no,
any thoughts?
no, there's definitely a lot of layers to unpack, and I think that's for another time for sure.
Okay. All right. I'll keep myself a little bit safe here. So, let's move on a little bit to the menopause and perimenopause side. First things first is defining what perimenopause is. This is a term that whenever we bring it up on the show, people are still curious about that. They're like, what is that? So when you say perimenopause, what does that mean?
So perimenopause is that shift or change within your body where your hormones are starting to fluctuate more so. So up until that point, if you're regardless, well, I guess up until about 35, is the general age that they say perimenopause can begin. Your hormone fluctuation each month, your estrogen rises and falls, testosterone does the same thing, progesterone does the same thing. And it's this even cycle, where your period comes almost on the same day every single month. But then you start to get to perimenopause and you might start noticing heavier bleeding, or you might start noticing more brain fog, or you might start noticing weight gain, and you don't really understand because what you were doing before isn't working now. Or you might even notice that changes in your cycle where you're not bleeding as much, or you might even start skipping months. So perimenopause are all of those changes and fluctuations that happen leading up to menopause. And then menopause is that entire full year without a cycle. So once you go one whole year without a period, then you know that you're in menopause, and you are in menopause for the rest of your life. Like, it's not something that you get to and you get through and it's over. You are in menopause the rest of your life. Like, if you see diagrams of menopause, it's like flatline for all of these hormones. There's no more fluctuation. And we are still producing hormones in different parts of our body, but not our ovaries, really. And so our ovaries are like done. They've done their job, and now we're making hormones through our adipose tissue and our adrenal glands and things like that. So,
what is the biggest thing that would be reasonable to expect in terms of changes in how one lives their life once menopause is fully present, right? Because we talked about before, well, depending on where we're at in the cycle, maybe I can work out a little bit more. Maybe I need some more calories. So what does this look like in menopause? I know that we have individualized testing. Of course, that's what we do best as FDNs. We can actually look at what that specific person needs. I just wanted to know, is like, there any general guidelines? Would we still have different times throughout the month in menopause where certain workouts might work better and at other times rest might work better? Or is it more consistent at that point?
it's definitely more consistent. And I definitely want to say that, like, menopause, especially now with the cultural shift that we're seeing in this space of midlife and perimenopause and menopause is not like this end stage. This is not the flower that's bloomed out and now it's dying. Like, that's not how we want to see menopause at all. We want to see it just as this new chapter where we are more consistent, we are more even keeled, because those hormones are, I don't want to say flatline here, but you know what I mean. They're just more consistent. And so we can see this as a new chapter in our life where women can still feel very vibrant and energetic. And some of the ways to do that is to really focus on strength training, because strength training is going to keep you strong, your muscles strong, which is going to keep your skeleton strong. Your bones are going to be better for it. And you do want to focus on bone health as well, because whenever you don't have estrogen, like you had in your earlier years, it can start to deteriorate things. This is why after menopause begins, heart attack and stroke risk go up for women, whereas before menopause, that was usually, what we worried about for men. And now it's kind of even now as far as like the heart attack and stroke risk for women when you're in menopause, because now we don't have that estrogen protection that we had. This is why hormone replacement therapy, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, comes in handy for women that are seeking things like that. But bone health is very important. You want to do exercises that strengthen your bones. So pounding your bones, like rebounding, skipping, jumping, things like that, to pound your bones to keep them, nice and compact, is very helpful in the menopause years, because we don't want to develop osteoporosis. And so also nutrition is going to be important. We want to make sure we're getting enough protein. The guideline is at least 30 grams of protein per meal during the day. Ideally, you'll hear doctors say 1 pound of protein for every pound of ideal weight you want to be. So if you want to be 130, then you should get 130 grams of protein a day. But the general rule, 30 grams a meal is the minimum, I guess. And then creatine. Creatine is a really good game changer for people in menopause, because it's good for all of those things. It's good for muscle health. It's good for bone health. It's good definitely for your brain, because, we want to stay sharp in menopausal years. And so those are definitely things that can help someone who is trying to be the best that they can and do the best things that they can for themselves once they reach menopause.
I love that you brought up creatine, because we've bring up every supplement under the sun on this show, especially over 400 episodes. And there is, I don't know if people know this, there is one supplement that is by far the most studied of all time. And at the time of recording this, it is creatine. So it is safe, it's effective. The only places it'd really be contraindicated are with kidney diseases that are already developed, but it's like one of the safest things out there. And ironically, especially from a sports performance or muscle performance standpoint, it's one of the most powerful natural supplements that you could possibly get. So it's kind of interesting that it's extremely safe, it's the best studied, and the effects that it can have are almost unbelievable when you read it as something natural. When you actually look at the data of what someone supplementing with it could achieve over a year versus someone who's not, it's almost hard to believe that this is something that's just completely natural. So I love that you mentioned that. I wanted to get into the hormone replacement therapy. It was my next question here, but I had to say, because I'm thinking about this, and it's so sad. It's almost like women are sold this lie from the time that they are like 12 or 13 years old for the rest of their life. So they're told when they're in their teenage years that, oh, this is going to suck, so you need this pill. Then you get into the 20s, 30s, this is also going to kind of suck, so you need this pill. Then you're going to go through menopause, and oh, that sucks. And that's, like you said, they almost look at it as this end of the line thing. And so you're sold this narrative throughout this whole period of your life, which is the majority of the time, and it's not even true. So I just love that you're kind of bringing light to this, that it does not need to be this way. We've been sold this narrative, but it certainly doesn't need to be this way. So let's jump into the hormone therapy side. This is something over the last year in particular I've been hearing much more about, and I think there's a more positive attitude around it for both males and females, and I think for good reasons. So the way that you already talked about it suggests to me that you do think there's a time and place. What I'm curious about, though, is do you think that everyone would benefit from some dose of this at some point, or is this only in certain circumstances in your practice?
I personally think that someone can benefit from hormone therapy at some point in their life, whether they decide to stay on it forever for the rest of their life or just temporarily to get through certain phases. And I just want to preface this with, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism in my 20s, and my doctor gave me a pill and said, you're going to be on this for the rest of your life. And I just thought it was thyroid medicine, right? Thyroid medicine. And this was before I found functional health and understood that certainly these are things we can work on and reverse. But I didn't think of a thyroid pill as being hormone replacement therapy. And now I understand, because thyroid is a hormone, and we are taking, T4, sometimes T3 and T4 whenever we take those thyroid pills. We are replacing the hormone that our body is not producing. It is hormone replacement therapy. And so if women because there's a lot of women who are on thyroid medication, if they view that as hormone replacement therapy, it doesn't seem so scary whenever you think about estrogen and progesterone and testosterone to replace those as well when those start dipping. And it's just because of that study that a lot of these doctors reference that really kind of scared everybody into not doing hormone therapy, because they were fearing that it would elevate their breast cancer risk. Mm-hmm. All of that has been debunked. And all of these influencers that I follow, like Dr. Mary Claire Haver, Dr. Vonda Wright, Dr. Kelly Casperson, these are great people to find on Instagram or their YouTube channel to really learn from them, because they are deep in the trenches doing clinical studies and also digging out old studies as well, and finding that these are very safe and effective things to help lower your risk for heart attack and stroke, to also help you as well to also stay fit in your menopausal years. And so there's just lots of benefits. I mean, think of the benefits of when you were younger and you had all those hormones. You're going to continue to get those benefits in menopause by just putting on a patch or putting on some cream, and this can really help, especially that brain fog. The one thing that I hated the most, and that I hear from other people that they hate also, is when they can't think of the word. Like, what is that word? I can't think of it. What's that guy's name? Like, they're constantly forgetting things. And that is the brain fog that people, once they get on hormone replacement therapy, it's like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Testosterone therapy was something that I found on my Dutch test to be low. And when I started taking it, it was the scenario that I heard once that I resonated with was, things were kind of dim and now everything's in bright full color, and I was firing on all engines. I was typing faster. Like, just a little bit helps your body to function at top speed, I guess.
For those that are listening, and there's always going to be that percentage that hear this and they're like, oh, that's great. And they look up their local hormone clinic. Just to be very clear, you are still stating that we want to make sure we have covered all of our bases with the lifestyle stuff and the functional testing first. And then this could almost, in essence, is a supplement, almost by definition, right? You're
Right.
not saying that this is like the first priority compared to
Oh,
lifestyle stuff.
no, you definitely want to test your hormones before you make any decisions whatsoever, because you don't want to mess with your hormones, like,
Mhm.
I mean, and everybody, there's a lot of people that say, well, I want to stay all natural or be as all natural. My grandmother did it. She lived to be in her 90s, and I mean, and that's great because my grandmother did too and lived to be in her 90s, but she also had a lot of heart issues.
Mhm.
And she also was more frail, when she got to a certain age. And those are just things that we can really kind of roll back and prevent for ourselves. It's just a new generation of aging. And I think that, it's good to just be educated about it and make the best decision for yourself.
This is more of a philosophical question about this, and I kind of have asked this to everyone who comes on and talks about. I know this isn't the main point of today, but the hormone replacement therapy, because I really don't know where to draw the line with this, and I don't know if you've thought about this. Do you have anything like? Would there be an objective point where you would draw the line and say, I wouldn't do this and this is too much? And here's what I mean. When I got into this space, you occasionally hear, once you get into the functional space, you start hearing about a lot of weird stuff, right? The second that you go to an alternative community, you're going to hear some weird things for sure, in the midst of the great things as well. And you hear about the purists. And what I mean by the purists is no supplements, no medications ever. And you're like, oh, that's so ridiculous. We have access to this stuff. Why would you not do it? Now, the opposite extreme is this. What point is too much? So, what I'm getting at is we're getting access to these amazing things now. Whereas, like, when I'm 50, if I want to, I can get my testosterone back to the levels that I had when I was 16, 17, or 18. And I don't have an answer for this. It's a fun question. It's not a serious question in a sense, but like, what would be the point where we have modified the body too much and we're doing too many things? Like, what is your goal? Is it just to still live to an otherwise normal life expectancy but do it as gracefully as possible? Because some of this stuff, as we get more advanced, you kind of realize, especially with the addition of Western medicine, we're definitely going to increase longevity, which I'm not even saying is a bad thing, but it's looking like it's getting so good that you kind of can't help but wonder, what does 10 to 15 years from now look like in terms of how long we will be able to increase lifespan, and even probably more importantly, functionality over that lifespan. So do you have any objective point where you would say, like, enough is enough, or hey, I'm not trying to go that far? Or for you, is it just as simple as, hey, I'm happy to live to 80 or 90, I just want to do it as functionally as possible? Is that the main goal for you?
I mean, I've heard people talk about the goal of living to be 120 or 130. I've heard that in the functional space, where like optimizing yourself and the biohacking stuff to help your body stretch and live that long. And I think if you can live a long, healthy life to where you're not dependent or you're not a burden, on society or your family or whatever, when it comes to just trying to be that old, as
Mhm.
long as you can really be vibrant and still do the things you want to do, I don't see a problem with, trying to help yourself live as long as you want to. Because of course, if you have children, you want to see them grow up and live as long as you can. And so, I mean, that would definitely be my goal. But I mean, for me personally, I'm just trying to live the most optimized healthy lifestyle that I can, because I do want to see my children grow old. I do want to see grandchildren, maybe great grandchildren. But yeah, I think past 120, it would get kind of weird, I mean,
Yeah.
150-year-old, yeah, that's a little crazy.
Well, and I think that's a totally reasonable perspective. But do you know the Brian Johnson guy that's been popping up everywhere trying to live forever, and he's doing all the crazy health experiments? You know who I'm talking
I'm
about?
not familiar with him though.
Oh, okay. He's a billionaire that turned his whole life into these health experiments. He's not fully aligned with like what an FDN would do per se. I mean, he's fully vegan. But he does have the record for the best and longest sleep scores of all time so far on like these wearables and stuff. And he's a very, you could tell he's a nice guy. He's a fascinating dude. But he challenged me, not that I got to talk to him, I'm just saying by watching his YouTube videos, he challenged me where I'm like, oh, I'm not trying to, play God here or live forever. But he said this is so interesting. He said, not wanting to live for tomorrow is the same as wanting to live forever. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, how is that the same thing? And then it's like, what he's getting at is, when would there be a point, unless you were, I mean, truly decaying and you really just feel weak and old, and you kind of just want to move on to the next thing. I've heard older people in my life kind of sometimes say like, oh, I can't wait to be out of this body. But that's only because of the state that their body is in. So his point is, there is almost no difference between wanting to live for tomorrow and wanting to live forever, because there is never going to be a point where you wake up and say, oh, I don't want to be here tomorrow. And I don't know, that really just, I'm still reflecting on it, but that just challenged me, because I don't think I want to be that person that wants to live forever. I think that's very weird in a sense. And I almost think that life has meaning because we know that there's a finite time limit on this. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you knew that you're going to be here forever, why do anything?
Right.
It's because we know that there's an end limit.
I totally get that. And I also think about like watching my own parents age, and you go to funerals and you see how many people are left at that age. And so like, who are you living for at that point, whenever all the people have died? Like, what's the fun in life if you don't have a community? So for me, that would be the big thing. Like, if I'm outliving everybody, well, what's the fun in that? Just to see things. I mean, I wouldn't have anyone to share it with that knew me forever, so that would kind of be where I'm coming from.
Yeah, sure. Either way, some really great things coming, and maybe we'll have the choice to make those decisions when they come. At the very least, I think we can all agree that if we're here for approximately 80 years, 90 years, if we're lucky, to do that as functionally as possible, I think that's something that we could all get behind. That makes total sense.
Absolutely.
So for those that don't know, one of the things we always ask our guests before they come back on, or on for the first time, is just what are some of the main things they'd like the audience to take away from today. And I wanted to make sure I went back to this. I think we cover this to some degree, but I wanted to ask it directly. You really wanted to, as someone in your 40s, make sure that, or things that you learned in your 40s, you wanted to make sure that the people that might be in their 20s that are listening to this, like, got some of the lessons that you wish you knew then. So is there anything else that you wanted to say? Because we do have plenty of listeners in their 20s, especially women. Is there anything that you'd want to say to them directly, things that you know now that you wish you knew back then, that hopefully they could apply to their lives?
Yes, actually, all three of my daughters are in their 20s. So the advice that I give to them and all of their friends is to really try to take care of your health through nutrition. I know it's really hard in your 20s because there's so much fast food and your life is going so fast, especially in school. But as much as you can, feed your body nutritious foods, whole foods, because in the long run, you're going to be better off for it. Your periods are going to be better off. Your mind is going to be better off. So nutrition really is important. So even for the 20-year-olds, it's important to get some good amounts of protein. Don't just eat all the carbs and the pasta. Get some good protein in there. If you're looking for supplements to take, I would definitely take some omega-3s. Creatine is still great for your 20s as well. I mean, obviously it's used mainly for the younger generation, and we're just finding out that it's really good for the older generation too. So taking creatine for yourself, whether you work out or not, you don't have to be an athlete to take creatine. It's going to help you overall. And just, manage your stress. Manage your stress so that you're not burning out your adrenals, because it's so easy to just go, stay up all night, burning the candles at both ends. But at some point you have to learn to rest and recover, and your body will thank you for it. Your mind will thank you for it. And that's something I think that's hard for 20-year-olds to do sometimes, but definitely learning to rest and recover is important.
Awesome. Obviously, you work with clients. We'll talk about where people can find you in a second. I'd love to know some of the stuff that people could expect to get from you. Like, maybe they're in menopause right now, or in that perimenopause stage, and they're wondering, like, all right, I really want to optimize this and do this the best way possible, the healthiest way possible. What could they expect if they chose to work with you? Because obviously you offer functional lab testing, so you definitely could be the person to help get them all optimized with that, correct?
Yes. Well, I can't directly, like, I can't prescribe bioidentical hormones, but I do use Quicksilver as far as like their estradiol that they have. Testosterone is something you have to get from prescription only. But progesterone and estradiol are two things that I could help people with. Depending on their test results, it's a conversation that we would have. But I also have worked with clients where I've just helped them determine if they need hormone replacement therapy. And so through the data, we talk it through, and then they may seek out a professional to where they go get prescriptions for creams or things like that too. So I work both ways depending on the needs of the client.
Cool. So even though, yes, you're not out there prescribing, it is still always very smart, everyone, to utilize some of these functional tests first to see what's going on.
Yes.
I'm seeing these clinics pop up. There's something called, oh man, it's something for men's health. I can't remember exactly what it is, but the point is it's a chain hopping up everywhere. And their marketing's brilliant because they get you in with like free tests for your testosterone. But I'm thinking, like, how many dudes are going to go in there and, you know, your testosterone could be altered, which it could just be altered because things do go down as we age. I get that. But how many people are going in with gut bugs, extraordinary stress, staying on phones until 1 a.m, and then we're going to shoot them with testosterone? I don't know. I'm not judging anyone, but I don't know that that's necessarily the ideal answer, right? So always make sure you're utilizing the functional tests first.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why it's so important to test everything and not guess. And also, you know, combining blood work with your Dutch test results, all of that is very useful and important just to see like what's going on from the serum level and also from the metabolite level.
Okay. And actually, I know this is kind of a bigger question to finish on per se. Before we ask where people can find you, I did want to touch on that. You kind of reminded me. So when you're doing hormone replacement therapy, one of the things that they're going to always do is blood work, whereas we're sitting here and we're taking urine, or they're giving, you know, urine to the lab and we're analyzing those results. There's also some salivary stuff that you can do with the Dutch test. So could we kind of just briefly touch on the differences, because they are all useful? We're not saying salivary beats urine beats blood or that one's irrelevant. That's true with certain tests. We're not saying that for hormones. So might that be different? Because of course, if someone's listening to this and hearing some of this stuff for the first time, they're like, well, my doctor never recommended, you know, a Dutch urine test. Why would I do that? So what are some of the main differences?
Yeah, so blood work is what doctors usually order, and we do like to look at that too, just because for testosterone in particular, testosterone can be validated from the Dutch test results. But the blood work is basically like what's happening in your blood right now. It's not looking at all of the fluctuations throughout a day. Saliva testing is going to look at free and available hormones that are available to the tissues in your body. And then the urine test is going to look at metabolites. How are your hormones being broken down? And the saliva test and the urine test are for a 24-hour period. So it's going to look at that fluctuation. And it's going to give us totals for throughout the day, which are very accurate to where your estrogen will be, to where your progesterone will be, and your testosterone. And then it's also looking at your cortisol. So, so those metabolites, looking to see how your hormones are being broken down, is really important compared to blood testing and how your hormones look at the moment, because your hormones are still all bound up in your blood. And so, but in the metabolites, we're seeing what's been free and available, how they broke down, and now here's the total. So we can really see what's available to your body that way too. And it just gives us a lot of insight. We can also look at how like oxidative stress plays a role in there too, because Dutch testing really can kind of gear you towards if you are having some DNA damage going on, whereas like blood testing isn't necessarily going to show you any of that. So they're all very useful. All can be used in different ways. We can all use them together if we want to. But, you know, Dutch testing is the first place that I like to start for sure.
Awesome. Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on again. Where can people find you if they would like to work with you? It's not like you only work with this group, but this is definitely one of your passions and something that people can get support with. So where can they find you?
You can find me at KimberlyRoseWellness.com, my website. You can book a call through there. You can find me Kimberly Rose Wellness on Instagram and TikTok. I'm sharing all kinds of information there as well. And on my link tree in Instagram is where you can sign up for my newsletter. I also have a detox program going on right now. So check all those things out, and I would love to help you.
Awesome. I normally ask the signature question on the show, but you did answer that last time. So maybe I'll switch it up a little bit and have some fun here. If you could, is there a link to the information? So yes, Terry, you probably just saw that on your screen because your chat might be coming in a little bit delayed. And if you can't see it for whatever reason, I should have said it out loud, but we'll also have it in the show notes for you, Terry. I know you're on LinkedIn, but you should be able to see it in the description. If for whatever reason you can't, shoot us a comment there or shoot us a message on LinkedIn, and we will make sure to send it right over to you. So we're glad that you're interested. I'll throw you kind of a fun question here. Then it might be the same as what you'd get everyone to do for their health. But if you could talk to all the ladies out there that are in perimenopause or menopause and get them to do one thing right now, what is the one thing that you'd get them to start doing or stop doing?
I would not freak out. I would be honoring my body and just knowing that this is a stage of life. We are living in an amazing time where we are learning more about women's health than ever before. So don't freak out, because if the study hasn't been done, it's being done or it's being planned. Tune in to all of these experts, and as well as myself, to continue to learn more and be guided in the right direction. But don't stress about it, because that's just going to make it worse. Start doing some of these simple things that we talked about. Start doing a little strength training, at least do some walking. Movement is so important. Eating protein every day. Just making some of these changes in your life during this stage is really going to help you. And I would love to speak with you if you really feel like you need a guide through it.
Awesome. And Terry, I see she got the information. Great. And so if anyone else needs the information, you guys know where to find it. Kimberly, thank you again for coming on.